bath and begun a spontaneous wrestling match, Greco-Roman style, that is, naked, on the floor of their bedroom. The youngest had gotten involved by turning his board books into projectiles, apparently trying to break up the match by knocking one of the older two out. I had recently left my job at an international law firm and started my own business law practice. Lauren was pregnant with our fourth boy, because clearly our house needed more Greco-Roman wrestlers. Life was then, as it still is now, fairly high-paced. On the way to the bathroom, I was debating whether I should get back to one of my clients who was in the middle of an investment round, or first clean the kitchen. I was also racking my brain trying to remember whose toothbrush was the Superman one and whose was the T-Rex one, because if I got this wrong, there was going to be more gnashing of teeth than brushing. This was all interrupted when I almost slipped on the bathwater that they had trailed onto the creaking floorboards of our 100-year-old house in Richmond, Virginia. I barely avoided a wipeout by catching myself on a doorknob that almost shook loose, and that's when the switch flips. I don't run out of patience nearly so much as I decide that I am out of patience. The next 10 minutes are a blur. I'm barking orders and moving bodies from one place to another, but it doesn't actually speed anything up. It just makes us all tense. In such moments, I begin to feel like an impotent general, shouting commands that, despite their volume, seem to have little effect on anything. Things like, "I don't care, you are using this toothbrush," and "I pulled the book out of your hands because you were not listening to me," or "No more drinks of water, we are done with water." Finally, I reach the moment I've been waiting for. I turn the lights out and I shut the door. But as I stood in the upstairs hallway, still damp with bathwater, I didn't feel the usual relief of bedtime being over. I felt conflicted and embarrassed. I was thinking about how this was a normal night, which means that their last image of me most days is one of this wild taskmaster, raging about how if they don't get their PJs on this instant, there will be dramatic physical consequences. I wondered if they sensed the irony when, before turning out the lights, I gave them a short bedtime prayer and told them that God loves them and that I do too. I wondered what they think love means. I'm not sure why this night was the occasion for my epiphany, because it certainly wasn't an unusual evening. In fact, it was typical, which is exactly what led to my epiphany. This is our normal, I murmured to myself, and that was not a good thing. The significance of what's normal. One of the most significant things about any household is what is considered to be normal. Moments aggregate and they become memories and tradition. Our routines become who we are. They become the story and culture of our families. Standing in the hallway that night, I wasn't disappointed with my evening nearly so much as I was disappointed with my ordinary. One night is one thing. A norm is another. Some weeks later, I was discussing our nightly chaos with one of my pastors, Derek, and he suggested I try a bedtime liturgy. "What's that?" I asked. He shared with me one he does with his boys, and I was intrigued. The idea of a bedtime liturgy sounded strange at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. A liturgy, in the formal sense, is a pattern of worship we repeat over and over, hoping that the pattern draws us into worship and forms us in the image of the one we worship. This wasn't totally new to me. In fact, I had been using time outside of my law practice to write about how habits of work and technology are really patterns of worship that deeply form us. I had thought a lot about the spiritual significance of daily habits functioning as liturgies, but honestly, I just hadn't really applied this insight to parenting and children. But when Derek mentioned a bedtime liturgy, the realization clicked. My parenting was already filled with liturgies, just not ones that I had chosen carefully. These small patterns I had with Lauren and the boys, our waking, our meals, our car rides, our bedtimes, these were all moments of worship too, guided by habits that could accurately be seen as liturgies. Liturgies of what? Now that I thought about it, probably liturgies of efficiency, impatience, rush, or frustration. These rhythms were certainly not ones I would choose, but they were the ones we had, and that needed to change. It was in this mix of both frustration and inspiration that I wrote my first nighttime blessing for the boys. I hoped it could be a little liturgy for